Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. Today in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu appoints a controversial political ally to a new cabinet position. We'll look at Itamar Ben-Givr and what both his detractors and supporters say about him. Widespread protests erupt in China over President Xi Jinping's COVID lockdown policies, with some people even calling for Xi to step down. As the number of illegal immigrants pouring across the southern border hits record levels, we'll take you to the new ground zero in Eagle Pass, Texas, to see what's happening in what's being called President Biden's border crisis. And with the flu season upon us and already turning deadly, CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us a look at some steps that you can take to protect yourself from the flu and other viruses.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin in Israel, where the incoming Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is holding intense negotiations with his coalition partners to form a new government. He's already decided to appoint Itamar Ben-Givr as National Security Minister, a position created just for him. As CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, Israel's president and the U.S. State Department have been raising concerns about Ben-Givr.
During Israel's recent elections campaign, Itamar Ben-Givr took the spotlight.
He's a little bit like Donald Trump. He behaves in an outrageous manner. He does so on purpose, and he is very visible, or has been up to the election.
Ben-Givr's party joined others to create the religious Zionist Party, which won 14 seats, making it the third largest in the Knesset. But during meetings with the various parties after the election, Israeli President Isaac Herzog was caught on a hot mic saying the entire world was anxious about Ben-Givr. The State Department condemned Ben-Givr when he attended an event honoring the late Meir Kahane, who advocated expelling Arabs from Israel and who Ben-Givr followed as a young man.
Celebrating the legacy of a terrorist organization is abhorrent. There is no other word for it. It is abhorrent. And we remain concerned, as we said before, by the legacy of Kahane and the continued use of rhetoric among violent right-wing extremists.
But Israeli journalist and columnist Ruthie Bloom told CBN News Ben-Givr has changed.
Well, what the press is doing is treating him as though he's the same Ben-Givr as he was many years ago. And as he has said repeatedly, I no longer believe, as I used to, in the teachings of Rabbi Meir Kahane. I no longer believe that all Arabs should be kicked out of Israel. I only believe that terrorists should be.
At the scene of the latest terror attack that killed 2 Israelis and injured more than a dozen, Ben-Givr gave an idea of what actions he would advocate as Israel's national security minister.
I say it in a clear way. We must exact the price from terror, go back to targeted assassinations to stop the parties in the security prisons, to stop the Palestinian Authority supporting terrorism payments. This can be done. I'm not talking politics, but we have to establish a government as fast as possible.
Recent polls showed a majority of Israelis, a near majority, support Ben-Givr as their national security minister. Charlene?
So why did Israeli President Isaac Herzog say the whole world is anxious about Ben-Givr?
Well, Charlene, he was talking about the past comments from Ben-Givr that advocated expelling Arabs from Israel, his following of Rabbi Meir Kahane, and also one time he praised Baruch Goldstein, who murdered 29 Arabs at the Tomb of the Patriarchs. But as Ruthie Bloom pointed out, he said repeatedly he's a changed person. He doesn't advocate expelling all Arabs. He wants to expel all terrorists. And one commentator pointed out recently, Avigdor Lieberman, he was the former defense minister, at one time considered a firebrand, condemned by many when he was appointed as defense minister, but things really quieted down when he took office. We'll see if Ben-Givr's experience will be similar. David Friedman, he's the former U.S. ambassador to Israel. He said recently that when somebody assumes office, often what they've said is tempered by the reality of what they can do when they get into office.
So, Chris, what are the differences between the media's image of him and what his supporters say that he stands for?
Well, the media castigates Ben-Givr as a racist and ultranationalist, and they point to all his former statements. But his supporters say he's for a strong Jewish state. He's for a strong Jewish identity. And they also want a strong response to Palestinian terrorism. And that's the reason why many Israelis voted for the religious Zionist Party. Many Israelis for the past year or so under the former government really have felt unsafe. They wanted a strong deterrence to terrorism. And that's why he went to that scene of the terror attack last week and made those statements of what he wants, what changes he wants to respond to this Palestinian wave of terrorism.
And what changes may Ben-Givr make on the Temple Mount, and why is that so significant?
Well, the Temple Mount is very significant, Charlene. It's really the flashpoint of, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Recently, Ben-Givr has been quiet about what he wants to do, but he likely wants to change what they call the status quo on the Temple Mount. The status quo means only Muslims can pray on the Temple Mount. That means Jews and Christians cannot pray there, and Ben-Givr would like to change that policy. It's significant because any change on the Temple Mount can lead to Palestinian leaders calling for violence. That happened in 2021. It happened in 1996, and many times before that. That's really a flashpoint. But Ben-Givr and many other Israelis right now are calling that this will be a time, a place where if anybody should be able to pray, it should be Jews. This was the site of the first and the second Jewish temples. Many people are praying and working towards a third temple, but that will be the flashpoint, and Ben-Givr will likely want to try to incrementally change the status quo on the Temple Mount.
All right. Well, our CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem. Thank you, Chris. And turning to China, where President Xi Jinping is facing a wave of public anger not seen in that country in decades. That anger leading to widespread protests over his policy of zero COVID, with some calling for Xi to resign. The Chinese government says it is easing up on that goal in some areas after its lockdown policy was blamed for the deaths of 10 people in a fire. Dale Hurd has the story.
Protest against China's strict zero COVID policy and working conditions at an iPhone factory have turned into protest against the communist government itself and its system of repression. Protesters took to the streets in 8 Chinese cities after at least 10 people died in an apartment fire. Protesters claimed the residents couldn't escape the building because of the government's lockdown policies. Protesters shouted, "End the dictatorship, no more COVID tests," and called for Chinese leader Xi Jinping to resign.
The zero COVID policy has been a disaster, both economically and politically inside China.
The protests started last week at Foxconn's largest iPhone plant, when workers threw bed frames from their company dormitories at police in hazmat suits, angry by delays in bonus payments and the company's handling of a COVID outbreak. Frustrations have been building among Chinese citizens over a bad economy and now the government's heavy-handed COVID policies.
The situation in China is deteriorating fast. You have an economy which looks like it's contracting. The property sector, which is the core of the Chinese economy, is essentially in free fall.
These protests have turned into the most widespread display of opposition to the ruling Communist Party in decades.
Ultimately, what the Chinese Communist Party fears more than anything else is its own citizens. It represses the citizens because it knows that they are an illegitimate entity. They don't have legitimacy from the population. They fear their own citizens.
The government's zero COVID policy has closed schools, factories, and shops, and even sealed neighborhoods and apartment blocks without warning. But don't look for the Chinese government to make a major course correction.
It is unimaginable that they will try to resolve the issue by backing down, changing the policy. It is not the Xi Jinping style.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, we'll take you to the new ground zero of what's being called President Biden's border crisis. In Eagle Pass, Texas, the number of illegals crossing the border has skyrocketed, along with the body count of those who died trying. We'll have that story for you when we come back. The first year President Biden took office, there were at least 1.7 million illegal immigrants breaching our southern border. This year, it's quickly approaching 3 million. And now there's a new ground zero in this escalating crisis. Tara Mergitter reports from the eye of the immigration storm.
The Rio Grande Valley has long been the #1 spot for illegal immigration in the U.S. But the numbers show the pattern appears to be changing, with more popular areas like here in McAllen, Texas, now giving way to more remote areas on the southern border. First light in Eagle Pass, Texas. Law enforcement officers wait as faces emerge from the darkness. A relentless routine night and day, as this section of the southern border becomes the new ground zero of what many here call President Biden's border crisis.
I'll invite any politician that says that this border is secure to come down to Eagle Pass so I can show them personally if it's secure or not.
Located in Maverick County, with a population of about 30,000, Eagle Pass is one of 2 major towns in the Del Rio sector. Since 2020, it's transformed from one of the quietest border stretches to the busiest, filled with immigrants who enter America illegally.
They said there's more people coming.
Oh, there's lots more coming. Each day, Eagle Pass alone sees some 2,000 illegal crossings. What should be a scenic South Texas shoreline looks more like a landfill. Migrants leaving behind mountains of clothes, dirty diapers, and other trash when they enter American soil. Is the border secure, Chief?
We've got people from all over the world crossing over. You see them in town, you see them everywhere. There's sometimes where in a single day, you'll have 600-700 people crossing over into the United States in a large group.
And now they are no longer largely made up of women and children from Central America.
You can see them walking in a single file line before Texas DPS takes them into custody.
The latest wave includes a record number of single men from Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, who turned themselves into Border Patrol more than 500,000 times over the last year.
I'm trying to get with my cousins to Miami, Florida. I don't know what the future got for me. I'm just believing my process, believing God, and trying to get this.
Like other migrants entering illegally under current immigration policies, most are processed by agents brought to a nearby charity to rest, then are free to go.
Por un mejor futuro y por cumplir el sueño americano, a trabajar.
CBN News drone footage shows this massive 153,000 square foot compound that opened this spring in Eagle Pass, designed to move migrants away from the border quicker and deeper into the U.S.
So what are you telling the third world? Now is the time to come. To suggest that they're going to be removed because they came here illegally, like it's going to happen, is a fantasy.
They come to this area because they don't have to deal with a lot of cartels like in Tamaulipas, the other states.
Graphic warning here. That's a person that did not make it, unfortunately.
While an estimated 3 million or more have made it here over the last year by going around official ports of entry, a growing number don't survive the last leg of the journey.
Drownings, that's people that have been locked in containers, that is people that have been that have succumbed to the elements out in the desert.
The number of migrants who are dying while breaching the U.S. border is skyrocketing too. Nearly 50 of them have been buried in this already full county cemetery because there wasn't enough room at the morgue to store their bodies. Their fresh graves, many of them marked with PVC pipe and labeled John Doe. Eagle Pass can no longer keep up with the body count, up from about 30 per year to 30 plus a month. Lieutenant Valdez must pick up bodies almost every day now.
We've set up a freezer for this influx of deceased persons to take care of that problem.
And hold on to them until they can be identified?
Exactly.
The goal is to eventually return bodies frozen in this giant container to loved ones. The city is also slammed with migrant-related emergencies.
It really puts a burden in the city of Eagle Pass. When we use our vehicles, our ambulances, our bus, our boats, that's taxpayers' money.
I carry my gun, and I don't sleep at night.
Residents complain about more crime.
Been responding to calls involving break-ins into ranches.
And concern is also growing about the deadly drugs coming into Eagle Pass and other border communities.
Mexican cartels know for a fact that they can operate along the border. We have seized over 400 million lethal doses of fentanyl along the southern border statewide in the state of Texas.
That's enough to kill every American.
More than 10,500 migrants.
Critics claim the Biden administration is turning a blind eye to a problem it created by rolling back Trump-era policies.
It's never been this bad. 6,000 to 8,000 people every 24 hours crossing the border illegally.
Who's to blame?
They inherited a border that was experiencing 40-year lows in crossings of illegal activity. We've never been in a situation where we had a surge on the border and the people who were responsible for abating it have walked away.
Please raise. Vice President Kamala Harris, tasked with overseeing the border, hasn't visited the region in more than a year.
He did drive through the border when he was on the campaign trail in 2008, and he is certainly familiar.
President Biden in more than a decade. In Texas, Border Patrol is recording upwards of 50,000 illegal crossings per month just in the Del Rio sector, which includes Eagle Pass. On the Texas-Mexico border, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Still ahead, flu season is here and it's off to a deadly start. We'll explain what you can do to protect yourself from the flu and other viruses spreading across the country right after this. This flu season is off to a deadly start. The CDC already reporting well over 2,000 deaths. More than 38,000 people have been hospitalized. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson tells how you can protect yourself and your family.
14 mostly southern and eastern states are currently experiencing the highest level of flu activity, with many others not far behind. The majority are influenza A, a highly aggressive strain. Hospitalization rates this early in the season haven't been this high since the 2009 swine flu pandemic.
Here we are again, thinking about and planning for a surge that will be really hard for us to absorb over the next couple of months.
And it's not just the flu. Other viruses like RSV, COVID, and the common cold are also spreading nationwide. Doctors say the best overall protection includes vaccination when possible and strengthening the body's immune system.
70 to 80% of your immune system is actually physically located in your gut.
A strong immune system can be traced to higher levels of good bacteria in the intestines, as these organisms can recognize and act when harmful viruses enter the body.
And that results in the release of something called interferons. And interferons are called interferons because they interfere with viruses. And then the interferons are the beginning of this immune cascade, this whole series of events of killer T cells and antibodies that all rush in to protect us from the virus.
Good bacteria are tiny living organisms found in certain beverages and foods like kimchi and yogurt, as well as some probiotic supplements. Once these good bacteria are ingested, it's important to feed them so they grow and multiply. Their favorite food? Fiber.
30 different plant foods per week was a sort of magic number for a healthy microbiome. And so you get credit for fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, seeds, spices, herbs, all of it. I can get 10 different plant foods into a bowl of oatmeal.
And while fiber strengthens the gut, certain medications can harm it. So talk to your doctor about whether you really need certain antibiotics or antacids.
Stomach acid is one of your body's main defenses against viruses. When you ingest a virus, which is a common way for people to get infected, if you have intact levels of stomach acid, it unravels that viral protein and renders it inactive.
Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Coming up, CBN's Orphans Promise standing with Ukrainians and giving Ukrainian refugees a message of hope at a special Thanksgiving event. We'll bring you that story when we come back. Stay with us. It was a night of fun, food, and fellowship for Ukrainian refugees living in Virginia Beach. Hundreds received a hot meal and heard a message of hope during a special Thanksgiving event. The Tidewater Ukrainian Cultural Association and Orphans Promise teamed up with Coastal Church in Chesapeake to encourage those who've had to flee their country because of the war. 700 Club co-host Terry Mewson, the founder of CBN's Orphans Promise, told the crowd, "We stand with Ukraine."
Seen character and depth in them that really has made the whole world stop and admire this country, you know, that has given so much, lost so much, but not given up. And I love that quality. And so, you know, that is just the hope that we all have. But what we need to know is that in the middle of it, God is always working. We never have to worry about that. He loves us, He's big, and He has a plan. And we need to trust that.
It's just amazing. I'm so grateful to people who care about other people, and I'm so grateful for this event, for the church that they invite all Ukrainian. It's a good chance for people to meet each other too, because you know when you move to different country, you don't have your friends with you.
And several members of Tanya's family, including her mother, sister, and aunt, escaped from the recently liberated city of Kherson 5 months ago and are now living safely in Virginia Beach. God bless them. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day, and God bless.